Welcome to Change It Up Radio. So happy to have you all with me today. I am Paula Shaw, and I am delighted to have you here in the midst of life as we know it during the pandemic. So there's many things to talk about today. I am very excited about the guest that I'm going to be introducing you to. Her name is Paulette Britton. And we are going to be talking today about autism. Paulette is the mother of an autistic son, and she is also the hard-working, hard-driving person helping nonprofits raise money for autism and for different causes. But I think she gives new meaning to the word devoted mother, because not only does she do everything in her power to work with her son and give him every advantage, but she's also she's so knowledgeable about this disease of autism. She's so knowledgeable about what is happening out there in the research, and she's just going to be a real fount of knowledge for us, and I think you're going to love her. She's a Texas girl, so that speaks for itself. She'll be joining us very shortly. But first, I would like to talk to you a little bit about what's happening in our world right now. I'm sure you're all feeling the shift. I know I certainly am. People are starting to get much more anticipatory about getting back out into the world. But along with that also comes some angst, some concern. Some people feel like things are opening up too soon. It's happening too fast. Other people feel like we don't know enough to be doing this. You know, is this putting us at risk? Does this mean there's going to be a second wave even worse? You know, lots of opinions and feelings and attitudes are going on out there. And I think it's just very important, more than anything, that you decide for yourself whether or not you feel good about starting to reopen your life to the outside world. As I was discussing this morning on my health and wellness show, I think one of the most important things is that we need to feel good about it ourselves. If we are going out there, but we're going out there fearfully, remember what Bruce Lipton taught us in an interview I did with him a little while back. Fear is so good at shutting down the immune system that the chemicals the body creates as a result of fear are actually given to patients who have had organ transplants, so that the immune system will be shut down and won't reject the new organ. So think about that. If those chemicals are that powerful, and we now walk out there into the world, we are so vulnerable. Forget the mask and the gloves. None of that is going to protect your immune system. And the immune system being strong is the most important thing we can do. So let's all exercise and eat lots of green leafy vegetables and do your yoga or your meditation, your prayer, read your books of wisdom, you know, keep your attitude positive, talk to the people that make you feel good, do things that make you feel good, because that's the most important thing we can do to keep our immune system strong. Of course, we want to be taking those supplements too. And as I have shared with some of you in the past, besides vitamin C, which is great, and if you can get liposomal vitamin C, that's even better. That's the form of vitamin C that was being used in Wuhan very successfully against this virus. Be sure you're taking D3. They found that's really important. And copper glycinate. I take that every day, morning and night. It's inexpensive, it's easy to get on Amazon, but they have shown that the virus can't live in the presence of metals, silver, gold, and copper. And this copper supplement is very simple to add to your supplements to just keep your body that much stronger. So I also think it would be kind of fun today, in light of the fact that things are beginning to open up. I don't know where all of you are living, but here in San Diego, the beaches are opening, restaurants are opening for dining in. I'm sure the trails are being opened. Some storefronts, salons are being opened. I think I heard fitness places as well. I'm not totally sure about that, but that's all happening this weekend. So life is shifting. It's very different from what we've been used to, which was basically stay home unless you have to go to the grocery store, the drugstore, or you're taking your daily walk. Now, all of a sudden, we are going to have other options. And for some of us, that's really good news because we've been getting kind of antsy. And like I say, for other people, they're not totally sure. But I think it would be kind of fun right now to just look back a little bit over what we have experienced with COVID-19. I'm particularly in touch with it because one of the things I decided to do early on, because there was so much bad news coming from the news, from what people were saying online, everywhere you turned, it was doom and gloom. So I decided that I was going to make a commitment. And you know, when we do segments on this radio show, they're 11 minutes and 30 seconds. And so I decided I was going to do 11:30 at 11:30, 11 minutes and 30 seconds of uplifting news at 11:30 each day. So I called it Highlights from the Silver Linings Playbook, and we live streamed it on Facebook every day. And if you want to see any of those segments, they're all on YouTube now on the Change It Up Radio channel. So you can see all of those. We talked about a lot of great things. For some of you, it may be nostalgic, like it is actually feeling to me. So some of the things that we talked about early on, I remember being super excited because they were going to have special hours before the markets open and Trader Joe's open for seniors so that they could shop with less people and not be worried. I remember the first time I heard that people were singing to each other from their balconies in Italy and in Spain, and that every night at 8 o'clock they were coming out and cheering for the first responders. Oh, I remember finding a story about a man who was in a grocery store. This was early on when everybody was panicking and grabbing the pasta and the toilet paper and all that stuff that, you know, they were afraid was going to be gone and what they would need to sustain them for a long period of time. And this man, just out of the goodness of his heart, told the checker to take care of the groceries for the next 2 people on his tab. That was such a beautiful thing. And I had something like that happen in my own family with my mom and dad. They innocently went to Walmart in the middle of the day to try to find toilet paper. And they, of course, could find none. And they said to one of the store clerks, "Is there any toilet paper?" And the guy said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. No, there isn't any." And now you got to remember, here are these 2 adorable people in their 90s. And there was a woman standing by, and she had a package of toilet paper in her cart. And she gave it to my mom and dad. That's the kind of beautiful stuff that went on during this pandemic that I cherish. That's some of the beautiful stories, the uplifting moments that signified to me that people were shifting out of a what's in it for me mentality and moving more into a what can I do for you? How can I help you mentality? I mean, I remember when my Rotary group started meeting online in Zoom, and somebody said they thought they had the virus, immediately people were volunteering to bring them groceries or help in any way they could, encouraging them to keep in touch. You know, it's like you always knew you had a lifeline with that group. And the ongoing text strand that's still happening with the members of my Rotary group and the members of my family. Those ongoing text strands have just really sustained me on days when it all felt kind of overwhelming or discouraging, you know. And I have to thank all of the people that created the images with either beautiful sayings or funny sayings that helped us all get through this pandemic as well. Some of my favorites were things like, oh, this is one I loved. I think when the dust settles, we will realize how little we need, how much we really have, and the value of human connection. Oh, I loved that one. Loved that one. And the other one I remember was a beautiful blue heart that was kind of a globe. And the saying was, and the world came together as the people stayed apart. Oh, it still gets to my heart when I think about some of the beautiful things we've experienced. And one final one, and then we'll take a little break, and I will bring Paulette Britton on to have a fascinating discussion about autism. This one I just saw yesterday, and I loved it. Hope will not be canceled. So on that note, I say to all of you, let's all hold on to our hope that a cure will be found, that this will all be over very soon, that the people we love will be safe, and that life will be back to normal, or the new normal, in all the beautiful ways that we all cherish in our ability to be able to do the things that we love. All right, we're going to take a quick break here, and when we come back, I'll be introducing you to Paulette Britton. We'll be right back. Okay. So for our live stream viewers, we actually aren't taking a break right here. We're going to go right ahead because we're recording this on Zoom, and then I send it to the studio and they do all the production things, put the music in and the intros and all of that. But for now, you're backstage with us here at Change It Up Radio. So here we go for segment 2.
Paula, am I ready?
Yes, you're going to be in just a moment. All right. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio here with Paula Shaw. I am so glad you're with me today because I have got an amazing guest to share some fascinating information with you. We're going to be talking about autism with Paulette Britton. And let me tell you just a little bit about Paulette before we bring her on. She's originally from Texas, so that tells you she's a wonderful person right there. I have to say I have a bias toward Texans. I have known some wonderful Texans in my life, but one of the things I find so interesting is it seems at some point the mothership calls them home. I have known more Texans who lived in California for years and then they ended up moving back to Texas. So we'll see what happens with Paulette. She's still a Californian right now, but she works with nonprofits assisting a program called Round Up Your Change for Giving. It's an app, actually. We'll have to ask her a bit about that. I'd love to know more about that, too. And she is also the director of the nonprofit project ALF, Autism Legacy Fund. And ALF is a project of the San Diego-based autism nonprofit called Bianca, which stands for Be Involved, Act Now, Champion Autism. So, Paulette, please join us. We have so much to talk to you about. Hello.
Hi, Paula. Thanks for having me.
Oh, my pleasure, my pleasure. the way this all originated, I want to tell our listeners, Paulette and I serve in the same Rotary group together. She is the secretary and a much harder working member than myself. But we were having a discussion after one of the meetings about autism. And all of a sudden I just went, oh my goodness, we have got to do this on a show, because I think while we all know autism exists, I think a lot of people don't really know that much about it, and don't really know what's the latest in terms of how it's being treated, what's the research, all of that kind of thing. So Paulette, why don't we start with, what exactly is autism?
Autism is a developmental disability, and it causes a person to not be able to communicate appropriately. It impairs their social interactions, and there are some ancillary things that can happen, like 30% of people with autism also have a seizure disorder. Another comorbid condition would be sensory integration disorder, which is, all of your senses not coming together to produce properly inside your nervous system like they're supposed to. But basically, it's primarily just impairs development and communication, and social interaction is just a huge deficit in that area.
Now, you are the mother of an autistic son. So can you tell us a little bit about your experience? When did you know? How did it evolve? What happened with Sam?
Sure. So Sam is today, he's 19 years old. So we've been at this for a long time. Sam was born perfectly perfect. He hit all his APGAR scores. He was developing just like our daughter, who's 3 years older, Madison. And so, no alarms or anything like that. And just after his first birthday, we started to notice some odd things and some odd behaviors that we didn't know what we were looking at the time, because we didn't know anything about autism, as most people, didn't, particularly that long ago. And so he then began to lose skills. And so by the time he was 2.5, the child that I had given birth to was parts of him were just disappearing. He stopped wanting to walk. He stopped talking. If you got within 3 feet of him, he would scream. He didn't want you to hold his hand and touch him anymore. And so these are all sensory related things. And we didn't know that at the time, of course. And then at 2 years, 9 months, he was diagnosed with autism and also with a sensory integration issue. And then it's been game on ever since.
What was that like for you? I mean, emotionally, I can't imagine, because I'm a mom too. You start out with one child, and the child that you had and love is disappearing and turning into somebody else.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's good to not know what you don't know. Because I am competitive. I am a problem solver. And I can remember driving home from our son's diagnosis, and I called my sister, who is his godmother, and I said, look, Sam was just diagnosed with autism. I'll be home in 30 minutes. By the time I get home, have something sitting on my desktop in my email that tells me what this is. And so she had something there. I started there. And I mean, from the minute of his diagnosis, I never believed for a second that it wasn't something we could overcome, even though I didn't know what it is. And I can remember telling my husband before he was diagnosed, before our son was diagnosed, I said, I don't know what he has, but I'm going to love this right out of him. And so to that end, like I said, game on.
Yeah. And for you, game on means a lot, because you've done so much more, I would say, than the average person ever would do. But before we get to what you're doing now and the nonprofits that you're working with, Can you also tell us a little bit more, just to give a broader education to the listeners? Are there drugs that are being used to help autistic children?
So basically, in the 70 known years of autism, there's never been a drug that is specifically for autism. There are a lot of things that are used off label, like Ritalin and all those kinds of things, but there's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've got to think that something's been around for 70 years
Wow.
and we still have nothing. And that's tragic.
That is incredibly tragic. Do we know what the reason is for that?
Well,
I mean, is a drug just not a big enough priority? I mean, it seems to me it should be a huge priority.
Well, I think from the beginning, when this was first, this first became had a name, had the name autism. When it was diagnosed, and basically it was put on the mothers, and the doctor said the kids are behaving this way because of refrigerator mothers, that the mothers are not loving and caring for and nurturing their children. So they were saying it's the mother's fault that this is helping. So it first started out as a parenting issue. Okay. And a nurturing issue. Mm-hmm. And then the kibosh got put on that because, clearly that was not the case. It's just all this particular doctor had to say about anything.
Right.
And so, and then it moved into, well, this is a behavioral issue. Mm-hmm. So then we had all these different behavioral therapies that people were trying that became the thing. So let's train them to, if they do the right thing, let's give them a piece of candy so that they'll keep doing the right thing. Right. So they tried to change their behavior by rewarding them for the proper behavior.
Right.
And there are other animals that are trained that way too. So I have issues with this.
Oh yeah.
And now we know that it's really not just like this, extraneous behavioral issue. I mean, we know it's a developmental disability, and a lot of it has to do with motor planning. You think about one of the last things that is developed in a human as our kids or infants and then toddlers is speech is one of the last things that develops, right?
Right.
And so autism hits during that time where speech is developed. And so there's got to be something, physical, medical, biological that's happening at that time that's impairing a person's ability to speak. And a lot of that speech development is based on a lot of motor planning, which is why kids playing and, PE and all of these things are so important, because when you're developing that kind you're developing those systems in your body when you're doing motor planning.
Right.
And so if it takes 100 muscles to form one utterance out of your mouth, if you point at something, that's communication. Mm-hmm. If you use sign language, that's communication, but that's all muscle, motor planning. All those things take that development and that training in order for it to happen. So, we know different things about autism now. And so I think part of hasn't developed a drug, it was because it was thought to be caused by all these external factors.
I see. So the drug development wasn't really prioritized because they didn't think that was going to be effective.
Exactly.
Yes. Well, Paulette, we're going to have to take a quick break here, but when we come back, I want to ask you about autism being on the rise. So stay with us, everybody. We will be right back. And after this break, we'll be asking Paulette more amazing information like what she has been giving us right here. All right, we'll be right back. Whoop, there's my alarm, which I can't turn off. Okay. All right, Paulette, I'm going to just get this set up and we're going to come right back.
Okay.
All of this, of course, will be edited out. Thank God.
Right.
All right, here we go. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio, here with Paula Shaw. And my guest today is Paulette Britton, who is the mother of an autistic son, but also kind of an activist out there in the world of autism. And she's doing a lot of amazing work with nonprofits to help find that cure that we're all looking for, that thing that will help autistic children have a shot at a beautiful life. So Paulette, it seems to me that I'm hearing about autism so much more than I was. I was a teacher in the 70s. I don't remember even hearing much then. And I recently read, actually, in some information you gave me, that in 1970, 1 out of 10,000 children was autistic. In 1995, 1 out of 1,000 were autistic. And today, 1 out of 54. Clearly, it's on the rise. What's going on with that? Do we know?
Well, there are, different thoughts on this, and some people are saying, well, we're just getting better at diagnosing it. Well, if the numbers were 1 in 54 back in the 70s and 80s, if those were the true numbers, if that's statistically what the numbers were back then, because now we're just better at doing it. What I want to know, where are the millions of adults with autism right now?
Right.
Okay. Because those people would exist right now. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you ask any teacher that's taught for 20 years or more, they will tell you absolutely developmental disabilities are on the rise. And even according to the CDC, I believe disabilities entirely across the board in the United States, 1 out of every 6 children are diagnosed. 1 out of 6.
Oh,
yeah. It's astounding. It's astounding what families are going through. And imagine, this rolls over straight into the school districts as well. Mm-hmm. And so, all of the training that they need to be able to work successfully with all these kids with disabilities, the extra time and attention and so forth that it takes, it's staggering. It's staggering. In fact, the projected numbers right now is that in 2025, which sounds like 50 years from now, because, it's hard to believe it's 2020.
Right.
But 2025 is 5 years from now. So right now, the number looks like the cost of autism is going to be $1 trillion by 2025. $1 trillion. Right. And so we're talking, moms and dads. We're talking, entire families. We're talking taxpayers. I mean, this is going to impact every living, breathing person.
Oh my goodness. And I understand that Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, PTSD, TBIs, and chronic fatigue are on the rise. Is there a connection somehow, some area of the brain or some function of the brain that connects all these things?
Well, there is a research scientist who happens to be right in our backyard. So I'm actually in San Diego County as well with you, mm-hmm. and right in our back door. And just to let your listeners know, one of the things that I have done the entire time with my son is to follow the science and to see what's out there. And so I've been in touch with research scientists from literally all over the world. And we've gone to different states and countries and so forth to seek help for Sam. Mm-hmm. So we've tried to leave no stone unturned, and to have it right here in our backyard is really fantastic. So UCSD is right here, and there is a gentleman, a physician researcher. His name is Dr. Robert Navi, Bob Navio, and he is a mitochondrial research specialist. And if you can remember your like 6th grade science, the easy version is the mitochondria is the factory inside the cells of our bodies. There are one or more inside of our cells that that generates the energy, basically makes the ATP that makes the cell work like it's supposed to. And so that's his specialty. And he just fell into it because he was helping families who had children with mitochondrial disease, and there was absolutely nothing for them. And then he began to think, I wonder if there's any connection with autism. So over the years, what Dr. Navio, the way I understand it, of course, I'm not speaking for him or the university or anybody, but the way I understand it is that over the decades of these, diseases showing themselves, there are silos of information. So we have these vast silos of, what is Alzheimer's, what is dementia, what is PTSD, what is chronic fatigue, what is autism, and what makes this one different than that one. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that you don't know, you have to know what makes them different to see if they're different in order to treat them for what they are. So that all makes sense. But Dr. Navio, I think, basically came up with the idea of what makes them the same. And so he coined this something called the cell danger response. And basically it is a switch that goes off that tells your cells to do things. And one of them would be to heal. And if the signal doesn't come to flip the switch, then the cell behaves as if it's diseased or under attack, even if it's not. So he, I think, believes, and he's been tracking like 10 of these different diseases, disorders, dysfunctions, that they have a common start. And it's very exciting because he's already done one round of clinical trials with autism with great results and safety. And the next round is coming.
Wow. And I've read that there's some work going on with the gut biome. Is that his work, or is he using something else?
No, he's using something else. So basically he looked at anything that could work on the cells to flip this switch, right? Couldn't find anything. Then he went and looked at all the drugs that ever existed, over 2,000 drugs that have ever existed in the world. And he found one that had this mechanism. Now that's not necessarily what this drug was made for. It's a drug called Suramin, and it's used for African sleeping sickness, which happens in Africa. So a pharmaceutical company makes a handful of it, gives it to the World Health Organization to distribute in Africa. So at the dosage that you need to kill the parasite that causes African sleeping sickness, it didn't work to flip the switch for autism. But if you backed it down to a very, very minuscule dose, that's when it worked, which from a safety standpoint is tremendous, because that means you're not looking at the same side effects that you have at a full dose. So it's very, very exciting science. And I'm just excited to have heard him speak many times and have met him and some of the people on his team. They're tremendous people.
And where does it stand right now? Are they doing more trials with this drug?
Well, the next clinical trial that's happening for autism is happening in spring of 2021. So they instead of getting the drug's over 100 years old, so it's not a patented drug anymore. So now he was able to partner with a group to make what he needs in order to continue to do these studies. And it would just be tremendous if the Alzheimer's associations and the dementias and all of those other organizations could grab this science and take it, because even if our children aren't impacted, we have family members, and we ourselves are getting older. We're all headed that direction, right? Yeah. And so we kind of all have skin in the game on this one. And so, I really love to point, the sign twirlers on the street corner that point to something. I feel like that's my job. I'm a sign twirler pointing to the good things that are happening and helping people to support in word and financially what Dr. Navio has going on.
So tell us exactly, who are you working with and what are you trying to do with those groups?
So one of the things that I do is I work as a coordinator for a company called CoinUp. And CoinUp is an app that you use, you download, and you can attach a debit or credit card to it. And you kind of round up your change into an electronic piggy bank inside your bank account. So if you make a $1.50 purchase, it rounds up 50 cents to $2. And then at the end of the month, it transfers your piggy bank over to the nonprofit that you've chosen to give that to.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
yeah, it's great. And so I love working with different nonprofits to help them successfully use this technology, because it's free to the nonprofit, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I do is I'm so passionate about what Dr. Navio and other researchers are doing that I wanted to figure out a way to really get behind what they're doing. And so one of my clients on CoinUp is a autism nonprofit in San Diego called Bianca, Be Involved, Act Now, Champion Autism. And you've mentioned them earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And they, a part of their mission statement has to do with supporting, research and science. And so I met with the director, Allison, the founder, and I said, Allison, is anybody driving this leg of your mission statement? She said, no. And I said, would you let me? And so my project is called the Autism Legacy Fund, because what we're looking for people to do is to leave a legacy of healing for this world. And they can do that in so many ways by supporting this kind of research. And so that's what I'm doing now. I'm working on basically a national campaign to kick off that fundraising, to make sure that people like Dr. Navio and other labs like Dr. Jim Adams, he's out of Arizona State. He's the one working on the gut microbiome and brain connection.
Yes, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment when we come back from this break. And also, Paulette, if somebody's listening right now and they need to leave, where can they donate if they'd like to donate money to this legacy fund you just talked about?
So I have a page called autismlegacyfund.org. So that's easy, autismlegacyfund.org. And they can give there. If you want, you can contact Dr. Navio's, you can contact them directly. You can talk to Dr. Jim Adams as well. So we're just trying to get it done.
And we will give you that information again at the end of the next segment. So we will be right back with Paulette, and I want to hear all about this gut biome thing. That's microbiome. That sounds fascinating. We'll be right back. All right, Miss Paulette, if you're ready to roll, we'll just do it.
All right.
Okay. Welcome back to Change It Up Radio here with Paula Shaw. My guest today is Paulette Britton, who is the mother of an autistic son. And she's also somebody who is out in the world doing a whole lot to try to help those who are working on finding a cure for autism and several other diseases which are also on the rise, like Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, chronic fatigue, and others. So in our last segment, we were just talking about what all those diseases have in common, because Dr. Navio, is it Navio, Paulette?
It is
working on trying to find something that will help all of those diseases. So there's something else in the offing right now, which is they've found a connection between the brain and the gut microbiome. So let's talk a little bit about that, Paulette, because that's pretty fascinating.
Oh, it's amazing. So I have to tell you, one of the interesting things about autism is it's generally started by these moms and dads who are trying to help their kids, right? And then what happens is they try this, they try that, and then they give that information to somebody else and somebody else. Well, families that have kids with autism know that their gut has been impacted, because our son was in terrible distress in his gut. So he had he either, okay, I'll just tell it like it is. He either had diarrhea or constipation ongoing for almost, it took us 7 years to correct his gut, if that
Oh,
tells you anything. It
wow.
was just a train wreck.
And
And
did that
so
start when the autism was
it
apparent?
did. It did. So
Wow.
it all, so it's so, you know, when you, a lot of times if you can correct the gut, there are things that happen in the brain that, that corrects the body, which completely makes sense, because what happens to you nutritionally feeds your entire body, feeds your entire energy system in order to work like it's supposed to. And all that, you know, all that comes from diet. So, so Dr. Jim Adams, he's out of Arizona State University. So I actually met him for the first time last October at a autism conference in Orange County. And he's an amazing, amazing man. And he's doing research on the gut-brain connection. And very interestingly, he's using microbiota transfer. So fecal matter transfer, so sanitized healthy poop, basically the bacteria anyway, that's in there, and recolonizing, I guess it's the best way I can put it, the gut in order for it to work like it's supposed to. And it was just amazing. What happened is that after a 2-year follow-up with the group of people with autism that he worked with, so there was almost a 50% decrease overall average in the autism. Okay, which to me, I flipped that around. They got 50% better.
Yeah.
Okay, if my son if his autism improved by 50%, that would change our lives and his. That would be a complete game changer.
Absolutely.
And so if you go in and do any kind of research, you just Google it, you know, gut microbiome and, you know, bipolar disorder, gut microbiome and this or that. You can find other research going on in that. But because this already exists, I believe Dr. Adams has gotten like an FDA fast track to move these trials going on. So he has clinical trials going on right now with people with autism who had gut issues, to see, you know, for the next round, to see the next phase, to see a larger group, and to see if this plays out in a larger group as it did in this small group.
That is really, when I read that, I can't even tell you my feelings, because, and now that you explain it, that the gut problems were in exact synchronicity with the onset of the autism, and then for the gut to be a problem for years after that. I mean, the tie-in is so obvious in so many ways, and yet obviously, who would ever think? I mean, it wasn't until pretty recently that doctors and researchers started realizing the importance of the gut microbiome, right?
Yes, according to what I know, that's the case. And now it almost seems like the most obvious place to start looking, because I think if you have if your gut is off and it's creating a toxic environment for your gut, and people know when when their guts hurt, when their stomach hurts and so forth, you know that there's something going on in there. You don't feel good all over.
Right.
And when the blood comes down and picks up nutrition to take to the rest of your body, what else does it pick up? And it takes it to it takes it to every part of your body from head to toe. So it's exciting research. And the exciting thing about that too, so much to me, is that, there's not as big of a safety issue that we have to worry about with something like that, side effects and whatnot. So yeah, it's exciting stuff. These are exciting times.
Because they're called fecal matter transplants, right?
Right.
MCTs. That's like a one-time thing. So it's not like, is that right? It's a one-time transfer, or do they have to do it several times?
I think I think in this study, I could be wrong, it was like 8 to 10 weeks, something like that.
Okay.
And they have now, they have, pills that they can do that with. And so there's an entire system an entire sequence of things that you have to do to get the best results out of this treatment. And so he's doing that.
And yet, once it's done, then the body takes over, right? It's not like you're doing an ongoing administering of drugs. correct?
Yeah, yeah, and that's what was kind of exciting when you read his. You can just go to Arizona State University, James Adams autism. You Google that, and then articles will come up. And that what was interesting about that is that the people that were in the study, like 2 years later, contacted him to just let him know that they were continuing to improve.
Yeah.
Even after the study was over, many of them were continuing to see an improvement. And so I think he went back and revisited all those folks and got a new set of data later on, at like a 2-year mark, which was a year ago March. Yeah. So super exciting, and we're really just really excited to get this information out there and point particularly to these 2 gentlemen who are doing amazing work.
So would you mention their names one more time, so for people who might want to write them down or look into
Sure. So it's Dr. Robert Navio, and he's at UCSD, and his last name is spelled Naviaux, Navio. And then Dr. James Adams, he's at Arizona State University.
And both of them are, well, actually, they're not working together. They're working on different aspects, right? Or different
Correct.
means of curing this situation or healing this situation.
Yeah, and healing, Paula, is absolutely the right word. And I say that because autism is a spectrum disorder, and there are some people that have an autism diagnosis that wouldn't change a thing about the way they go about life, and nobody wants to force them to, right? I mean, that's their prerogative. On the other hand, you have this other kind of autism that, like, my son has, and so many of my friends have, that would be considered more severe, where they don't have language, where they can't tell you if they hurt, they can't tell you if somebody was mean to them, they can't tell you if this is what I want to do or this is what I don't want to do. They can't eat certain things. They are self-injurious or injurious to others. That's a whole different ballgame. So, we're looking to help the ones that are just the most impacted by this to move into, a part of life where they can comfortably exist in their own skin.
So for 19 years, you have been on this mission to help your son, because he's dealing with some very, very difficult symptoms, isn't he?
He is. Yeah, about 16 and a half. So we started dealing with it, like you said, around 18 months or so. So it's been, it's been quite some time. But I just don't know how to let it go. I just don't believe that this is the end of the road for him and this is his forever. I just have never believed that for a second in my life. And therefore, we press on.
Well, I think we are incredibly blessed, Paulette, to have somebody like you out there leading this charge, because, I'm reminded at one point in life, I got to meet Candy Leitner, who started Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. And she was a mother on a mission too. And she changed things in a huge way. And I hope that everybody listening to this show decides to get on the bandwagon here and donate to this group. I want you to give the information again, so that these people who are out there leading the charge can help our children, so that the statistics down the road will be that autism is on a decline, and that there is help for people who want that help. So tell us again, Paulette, where can we go to donate to this cause?
We can, mine particularly is autismlegacyfund.org, autismlegacyfund.org. You can go straight to UCSD, to Dr. Navio's website at UCSD, .edu. If you Navio Autism UCSD, you'll find him. And then Dr. James Adams at Arizona State University. You can contact both of those labs if you want to give directly. And that's great because, we're all on the same, we all have an oar rowing the same boat. So we're all trying to head in the same direction.
Well, thank you so much for gracing us with your presence, with this amazing information, and with your spirit, Paulette, and your love for your child. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate you having me, and I'm sorry we don't have more time, because there's things that, as we wait for this research to come, there are things that, if I had to go back and do it over again, one of the things that I would have done is used assistive technology to help my son learn to speak. And that's kind of a whole different area. Right now there are iPads and apps that kids can type on and learn to tell people what it is that's going on. And if I could encourage parents to do anything for their kids, is to give them a voice now as we wait for these other things to come.
Oh, beautiful. All right. And on that note, I thank you. I thank all our listeners for being with us. And don't forget, you can hear this show on AM 1170, The Answer, and 96.1 FM, The Answer, Sunday night at 9 o'clock. And we are on every major podcast platform. So all you have to do is ask Alexa or ask Siri if you forget where we are. Thanks for joining us, and bless you, Paulette. And please go to those websites that she talked about. Let's support this. Let's turn this around for our kids. All right. We'll see you next week on Change It Up Radio. Bye-bye.